Welcome to this deep dive. Now, this is specifically crafted for you as a UPSC aspirant navigating those crucial current affairs for mains and prelims.
That's right.
And today, we're tackling something really significant for India's future. The need to decarbonize our logistics sector. Our main source for this exploration is the Hindu.
And the core issue, which I think will really resonate, is this kind of paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
India's got this huge vision, Viksit Bharat by 2047, becoming a developed nation. And that depends heavily on, strong growth, inclusivity.
Which means logistics has to be firing on all cylinders.
Absolutely essential. A dynamic, efficient logistics sector is just fundamental.
Definitely. I mean, just think about the sheer scale of movement needed.
Yeah.
Goods crisscrossing the country, reaching everyone. But, and here's the rub, right? This vital sector is also a major carbon emitter. We're talking what? About 13.5% of India's total emissions?
That's the figure, a significant chunk.
So the big question we're unpacking today is, how does India square the circle? Achieve its economic dreams without, damaging the environment further? Can we build a developed India sustainably?
Exactly. And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We want to pull out the key insights from the Hindu's coverage on this.
Looking at the environmental impact, but also the pathways forward.
Precisely. The impact of current logistics and how India is looking at a greener future. We want to give you a clear, structured understanding, without getting lost in too much jargon.
Okay, so let's start with that footprint. 13.5% is a big number. Where's that coming from, primarily?
Well, the data the Hindu presents points overwhelmingly towards road transport. It's actually quite stark.
How stark?
Nearly 90% of passenger movement and around 70% of freight movement happens on roads.
70% of freight. Wow.
Yeah, and consequently, road transport ends up being responsible for, get this, over 88% of the emissions from the entire logistics sector.
Over 88%. That's massive. So it's really concentrated there.
Hugely concentrated.
And within road transport, I imagine trucks are the main culprits.
You're spot on. The article points out that trucks, just trucks alone, account for nearly 38% of all the key emissions from logistics.
38% just from trucks.
It really highlights why things like electric trucks are important. Maybe also, we need to think smarter about supply chains.
Like shifting some freight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Shifting freight to modes like rail, especially for those long distances. It's not just about cleaner tech, it's about smarter planning overall.
Okay. Now, the Hindu also talks about government plans to really expand maritime and inland waterways by 2030. That sounds potentially greener.
It does offer potential, yeah. The targets are ambitious, tripling cargo and passengers on inland waterways, increasing coastal shipping cargoes significantly too.
So a shift away from roads.
That's the idea. It could mean a lower carbon footprint compared to road. But, and this is crucial, the Hindu rightly flags that this growth must be managed responsibly, meaning we need environmentally sound policies right from the start. We can't just shift the problem. We need investment in green tech for these modes, too, to make sure this expansion doesn't create, new environmental headaches down the line.
Right. So it's not just shifting modes, but making the new modes as clean as possible. Makes sense. So stepping back a bit, why is this green transformation so vital for India beyond just, say, hitting climate targets?
Well, if you connect it back to that Viksit Bharat goal, a sustainable logistics sector isn't just nice to have environmentally. It's actually fundamental for our long-term economic strength.
How so? Resilience, competitiveness.
Both. Think about global markets. There's increasing pressure, increasing scrutiny on the carbon footprint of goods.
True. Supply chain emissions are becoming a big deal.
Exactly. If our logistics sector is seen as polluting, inefficient, that's going to hit our trade competitiveness. We need clean, resilient infrastructure to compete globally.
That's a really critical point. We can't aim for global leadership with outdated polluting systems. Does the Hindu mention how other countries have handled this? Benchmarks, maybe?
It does. It points to China and the U.S. as interesting examples.
In what way?
Well, what's striking is how successful they've been in shifting a lot of freight from roads to rail.
Really? How much?
In China, for instance, rail apparently handles almost half of all freight. Nearly 50%.
Half. That's a huge difference compared to our 70% on roads.
It is. It really shows the potential for a much less carbon-intensive way to move goods around. Makes you think about the policy choices that led there.
And it's worth remembering, India isn't starting from zero here. We've made some real progress with electrifying railways, haven't we?
Absolutely. That's a huge plus. India's progress on railway electrification is a really strong foundation to build on.
So the infrastructure is partly there?
A significant part. Further investment in expanding and upgrading those electrified lines could really boost the share of freight going by rail, and that means direct, significant cuts in emissions.
Okay, so we see the problem, the urgency, and some potential directions. What specific steps or innovations are being looked at? What does the Hindu highlight?
It outlines several key areas. First off, acknowledging that even with high emissions now, road logistics will still be vital. So innovation within that sector is crucial.
And there's that pilot project mentioned, right? The Delhi-Jaipur one, with electric trucks using overhead wires.
Yes, exactly. That's a fascinating one. Using overhead catenary systems like you see for some trains or trams, but for electric trucks on highways.
Sounds almost sci-fi for trucks. But what about the practical side? Cost, maintenance? Do existing trucks need major changes?
Those are exactly the right questions. It's potentially revolutionary for long-haul road freight, maybe overcoming some battery limitations for heavy loads. But yeah, scalability, cost-effectiveness, building the infrastructure, integrating it. These are huge hurdles.
Definitely something to watch, though.
Oh, absolutely. If they can make it work and scale it, it could be a real game changer.
Okay, what about those other modes? Coastal shipping, inland waterways. What green tech is being explored there?
Well, there's global momentum here. The Hindu mentions the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, aiming to cut shipping emissions by half by 2050.
So there's international pressure and innovation happening.
Right, and that creates opportunities for India. We could invest in vessels using cleaner fuels like LNG.
Liquefied natural gas.
Yes, or exploring solar electric boats, maybe for shorter routes on rivers, and using biofuel-run barges on inland waterways. Lots of possibilities.
And the benefit is twofold, presumably. Lower emissions and developing new tech.
Exactly that. We cut our carbon footprint and we stimulate innovation and manufacturing in these cleaner technologies domestically. Win-win, potentially.
Now, there's always one sector that seems tougher to decarbonize: air transport. Does the article touch on that?
It does, and it reflects the reality. It's very difficult to make big near-term emission cuts in aviation.
Because of the fuel.
Primarily, yeah. The heavy reliance on conventional jet fuels. There's talk of sustainable aviation fuels, SAFs derived from biomass, or even captured carbon and efficiency gains. But they seem like longer-term solutions.
So not the quick win.
Probably not. The Hindu sort of hints that the bigger gains in overall logistics emissions might come more realistically from improvements and shifts in road, rail, and water transport first.
That makes sense. Focus where the biggest, quickest gains are possible. Now, one area that might get overlooked when we think emissions is warehousing, but the Hindu points it out.
Yes, and it's a really important point. Warehouses don't move goods, but they use a lot of energy.
For lighting, cooling, heating, machinery.
Exactly. All that adds up, making them a significant source of indirect emissions from the electricity they consume.
So what's the solution there?
It's actually quite straightforward, relatively speaking, and has double benefits again. Prioritizing renewable energy sources.
Like solar panels on those huge warehouse roofs?
Perfect example. Solar, wind, maybe even geothermal were feasible.
Yeah.
Using renewables cuts the carbon footprint, but it also saves money on energy bills and improves energy security for the facility. Makes good business sense, too.
So pulling all these threads together, looking at the bigger picture, it sounds like this whole decarbonization push isn't just a burden, it's actually an opportunity for India.
That's precisely the framing the Hindu suggests. Viewing this drive as a chance to make India's logistics sector more competitive, more resilient, and importantly, aligned with global sustainability standards, which are only going to get stricter.
So investing in the right things now pays off later.
Exactly. Strategic investments in areas like electrified rail, cleaner road options like that e-highway maybe, cleaner shipping fuels, energy-efficient warehouses. This builds a logistics network that's fit for the 21st century.
So the key takeaway, especially for our listeners, seems to be that sustainable logistics isn't about stopping growth. It's about enabling smarter, more resilient growth.
Perfectly put. It supports both economic development and environmental stewardship. They aren't mutually exclusive goals here.
Which is crucial for the Viksit Bharat vision.
Absolutely. The journey towards this greener logistics sector is definitely underway. But as the Hindu concludes, it's going to need sustained political will, smart strategic investment, and importantly, collaboration between government, industry, everyone involved.
So for you, the UPSC aspirant listening to this deep dive, really think about this. As India moves towards its goal of being a developed nation, understanding these complex issues like sustainable infrastructure, decarbonizing logistics, it's not just about knowing current affairs.
Mm-hmm.
It's about understanding a fundamental piece of how the nation's future is being built. Think about that interconnectedness. The economy, the environment, the policies driving change. It's central to the challenges and opportunities India faces, and perhaps the role you might play one day. If you found this discussion useful, please do like, subscribe to our channel, and maybe drop a comment below with any further questions or thoughts. We really value your engagement.
We do.
And remember, this deep dive drew its insights from reporting in the Hindu